How's everyone doing? Look, I just did a Genghis Khan video. I'm doing another one. Oh, look at that. I got beer spray all over, but I don't care. I don't care none. I don't care. We are gonna wipe it off the keyboard though. Shh, it's fine. I know what you're saying. Kris, have you been drinking too much? Yeah, probably. This is the third beer, and the last video was a 15-minute video, and there was like a 4-minute ad. And I'm burping. So, I just did the Simon Whistler had. It was an interesting video. It was the Genghis Khan, kind of where the tomb is. I paused. I think it was a 15-minute video. I turned it in about 4 hours because I talked a lot, like I'm doing right now. But we're going to disregard all this. And we're just going to start the video. And I know what you're thinking. Are you okay to make these videos? Because you sound like you're a little buzzed. Goddamn right I am. Video time.
Genghis Khan, a name that is synonymous with barbaric cruelty and conquest. 800 years ago, he created the greatest army the world has ever known, wielding it with tactical brilliance to lay claim to the largest empire in world history. No other man, Alexander, Napoleon, or Hitler, ever came close to the level of success in conquest of the Mongolian man of steel. So, how did he do it? Well, in today's Biographics, we discover how a simple peasant rose from one of the harshest environments on the planet to take the world by storm. What we know about the early life of this man who would rise to rule the world comes from an account called The Secret History of the Mongols, written soon after he died. It tells us that Genghis was born somewhere in the steppes of Central Asia around the year 1165. It is said that he was born with a clot of blood in his hand, which was seen as a portent of great things to come. Genghis was born into a harsh, unforgiving world. The Mongols, who lacked a common chief, were broken into a number of clans who were constantly warring with each other. The landscape was vast and rugged. Situated between Europe and China, it consisted of an inhospitable series of rolling hills, rocky outcrops, and freezing temperatures. The Chinese referred to the region as the Barbarian Wilderness and built a great wall to keep its inhabitants from raiding their border regions.
Question. Mongolia today, it doesn't exist, right? Is that China or Russia today? God, I hope I'm right. If not, I've been drinking a lot. 3 beers in about 15 minutes, so it's not my fault. But if I am correct, then I'm not a stupid piece of garbage.
For the Mongols, strength was found in numbers. Large families were encouraged, with polygamy an accepted custom. Genghis's father had 2 wives. The boy's mother had been abducted from her previous husband in another tribe. As a boy, Genghis grew up with 3 brothers, a sister, and 2 half-brothers. His earliest years were spent hunting, riding, and roaming the plains. As part of a nomadic society, his clan were constantly on the move, seeking new pastures whenever the grazing for their sheep was exhausted. Genghis is reported to have grown up as a brave and defiant young man, his only fear being dogs. Yet, he was an introvert who preferred to spend the bulk of his time alone with his thoughts. He was fiercely independent, seeing no value in consultation with others. As he emerged into his teens, it was apparent to all that he had a sense of his own destiny, and that destiny lay far beyond the clan that was then his world. As was the custom, at around 9 years old, Genghis's parents arranged a marriage for their son. His wife-to-be was named Berta, who was from a neighboring tribe, and Genghis was to be transferred to that camp so that he could grow up alongside his bride. On the return trip after delivering his son, Genghis's father met a party of Tartars on their way to a hunting expedition. They seemed hospitable, offering him food and drink. However, the offerings, they were laced with poison, and 3 days later, his father died.
Oh, wow. I didn't know
Genghis
that.
quickly returned to the fatherless family, who were abandoned by the rest of the clan. His mother, Harleen, now assumed the mantle of headship. Within the household, there was constant friction between the 3 sons of Harleen and their 2 stepbrothers. One day, when he was 13 years of age, Genghis was holding a fish that he had caught when one of his stepbrothers came up and snatched it from his hand. Without hesitation, Genghis drew his bow and killed the boy. This was the first clear demonstration of the absolute ruthlessness that would come to characterize the boy who would become the Great Khan. By the age of 15,
Killed his stepbrother over a fish? Imagine if the stepbrother was just like holding the fish and the arrow in his chest, and he's like, "Oh, I was just joking. You can have it back." I mean, there have been plenty of times that I've went fishing. Use this example because there aren't. I don't like the way fish feel. So I catch fish, right? And somebody comes over and they snatch the fish out of my hand, and I just look at them and I go, "That's my fish." And they go, "Yeah, you're right." And they give it back to me. Problem solved. I don't go, "Okay, combat's a comin'. Different times."
Genghis was stronger, bigger, and more skillful in hunting and horsemanship than his brothers. His brothers began to bow to him as their natural leader. His reputation as a strong warrior began to spread. Soon the clan that had deserted his family when his father had died got to hear of this upstart. Fearing that he might lead his brothers against them, he decided to take the initiative by invading the family's encampment and taking Genghis captive. But Genghis was able to escape. The invaders fanned out into the wilderness, and 9 days later they found him. Genghis was taken prisoner, and a heavy wooden yoke was placed around his neck. A couple of days later, while Genghis was languishing inside a guarded tent with the yoke still around his neck, his captors threw a celebratory party. Despite the inconvenience of the yoke, Genghis managed to overpower his guard. He got down to the river before his absence was discovered. Unable to traverse the river while wearing the yoke, he then returned to the tent from which he had come. There he found the guard who he had recently overpowered. Genghis then displayed the shrewdness of thinking, which was to set him apart. He told the guard that unless he got him out of the yoke and gave him a horse, he would tell the others that the guard had helped him escape. The blackmail worked, and he was soon galloping away from his captors.
That's pretty smart, actually.
A year later at
Wow. That's pretty smart. Not only do you humiliate him by overpowering him, you now make him give you a horse. Wow. That's crazy.
A year later, at age 16, Genghis returned to the village of Berta, the girl he had been pledged to at the time of his father's death. It was time to get married. As a wedding gift, the girl's father gave him a spectacular sable coat. The next day, Genghis took his wife back to his encampment and left her in the care of his mother. He then rode off to a neighboring clan where he presented his new coat as a gift to the chieftain by the name of Togrul. In doing so, Genghis was purchasing the allegiance of this powerful clan leader. He asked Togrul to help him win back the loyalty of the tribesmen who deserted his family after his father's death. Togrul was sympathetic, and a pact was formed between them. News of the alliance, it soon spread. Other clans offered their support, and before long, Genghis was able to call upon a formidable force of warriors. Before he could put them into action, however, disaster struck. Invading Merkit horsemen came thundering across the plains, intent on kidnapping the women of Genghis's camp. The majority of the clan managed to escape, but Genghis's young wife, Berta, was taken captive by the Merkits. Genghis desperately rode for the camp of Togrul for help. Togrul announced that he would ride upon the Merkits and destroy them, returning Berta to her husband. Over the next few months, the alliance managed to bring together more than 5,000 warriors in order to ride with them. The attack was swift and decisive. The Mongol hordes decimated the Merkit camp, killing, looting, and pillaging without mercy. In the midst of the camp, they found Berta. She had been raped repeatedly and was pregnant. Shortly after returning to camp, she gave birth to a son, but it was never known if it was Genghis's child or one of the Merkit rapists. In the wake of the overthrow of the Merkits, Genghis went from strength to strength. He united with the clan of his boyhood friend, Jamuka. The two men became inseparable, declaring themselves blood brothers. They lived together, ate together, and slept together. This roused the jealousy of Genghis's wife and mother, who began to spread rumors about Jamuka in an attempt to drive the two men apart.
Wait a minute. He saved you from being brutally raped, possibly giving birth to a child that wasn't his. And she gets jealous of this guy, his best friend? I'm sorry, lady. That was work. I'm sorry, lady, but that's a dick move on your part, if you don't mind me saying. I gotta do a text real fast.
Whether it was the influence of the women in his life or his own lust for absolute power, something caused Genghis to sever the bond with Jamuka. In 1185, the two clans were moving towards fertile grazing grounds when Jamuka decided to turn off and camp in a valley. He called to Genghis to join him, but Genghis ignored him and kept on riding. Carrying on a mile or so, he turned in his saddle to see that not only had his own clansmen followed him, but many of Jamuka's men had as well. Genghis was now developing the largest following of any of the Mongol clans. This was achieved partly through the desire for security in numbers and partly by coercion. Those who did not agree to give Genghis their allegiance, well, they were forced to do so. The combination of his desire for power and wealth and his need to feed his ever-expanding following led to repeated raids on other clans, the capture of their women, and the plundering of their belongings. The Secret History of the Mongols attributes a quote to Genghis, which may be familiar to fans of the 1982 movie Conan the Barbarian, in which the words were given to Arnold Schwarzenegger's character. "The greatest pleasure is to vanquish your enemies and chase them before you, to rob them of their wealth and see those dear to them bathed in tears, to ride their horses and clasp to your bosom their wives and daughters." At this point, still in his early 20s, Genghis had already proved himself to be brilliant at psychological warfare. He would attack a tribe with horrific and devastating force in order to intimidate the surrounding camps to give up without a fight. As a result, many thousands of his enemies simply surrendered in order to avoid the carnage that would result if they resisted. Having subjugated and melded into one the disparate Mongol clans, Genghis now set his sights on the furthest reaches of the Barbarian Wilderness. Among those who had not yet joined his alliance was his former best friend Jamuka, who was now his mortal enemy. The people of the two camps had been able to maintain a sort of uneasy peace. However, one day a disagreement over grazing lands erupted into violence, with one of Genghis's men killing a warrior from Jamuka's camp. An outraged Jamuka reacted by attacking the much larger camp of Genghis. The unexpectedness and lightning speed of the raid resulted in the killing of many and the capture of 70 of Genghis's chieftains, who were taken back to Jamuka's camp, where they were tortured and boiled alive. Genghis, he was shocked to his core.
Boiled alive? I mean, that's rude. I can think of other ways to kill someone. Torturing them is one thing. You can't say torturing and then boiled alive. That goes in with torturing. Sorry, I've been drinking.
This humiliating defeat. He came to the realization that his army was not yet ready to engage in the large-scale conquests that he had envisioned. Consequently, he set out to mold them into a war machine, a breed of warrior the likes of which had never been seen before. The army that resulted was incredibly mobile, able to travel an average of 70 miles per day. The men were subjected to the most severe discipline in order to forge their minds and bodies into warrior-like steel. Before long, the reputation of the barbarian super army spread beyond the boundaries of Mongolia. When the rulers of the Qin Empire in China heard about them, they invited Genghis to come and help them fight off marauding bands, the Tartars, who were constantly harassing them. The Tartars were also longtime enemies of the Mongols, and Genghis saw this as an opportunity to exact vengeance while expanding his reach internationally. In short order, the overpowering force of the Mongols crushed the Tartars. Returning to triumph in their home country, Genghis's army was immediately attacked by Jamuka's forces. This time, however, Genghis was ready. Over a series of 3 bloody encounters, Jamuka's followers were finally subjugated. Jamuka, however, managed to escape, fleeing to the sanctity of the Naimans, a powerful tribe dwelling in the northwesterly region of the steppes. When news reached Genghis that Jamuka had joined the Naiman, he set his sights on destroying them. He unleashed his 80,000-strong cavalry against them, totally overpowering them in a frenzy of bloodletting. Amazingly, however, Jamuka managed to escape once again. He hid with a small clan of mountain dwellers, but they, fearing the wrath of the invaders, betrayed Jamuka and handed him over to the camp of Genghis. Genghis, though, he was shocked by the lack of loyalty to Jamuka, and he had them all slaughtered. Then he extended mercy to Jamuka.
What? Oh my gosh. Alexander the Great did something exactly similar. He was hunting that Persian king, and then the people basically feared that he was coming for them. So they killed that Persian king, and then he had them all killed and gave the Persian king the burial that, he deserved. That's great. You think you're doing something good by, hey, look, man, we can't have anything to do with you. It's almost like we would respect you more if you would fight and die. I'm not laughing at the death of them. I'm just laughing at how ridiculous the thought of all of it is. You would think you would want to reward those people, because now those people are on your side. But now everyone else is going to fear, like, oh man, because if you flee to them, if Genghis Khan is after you, right, and you flee to my tribe, the Kris tribe, and I turn you in, I'm going to be killed. So you fleeing to my tribe now puts me in a position I have to fight for you and die. Like, that's a dick move on your part, by the way. Don't ever do that. Look at Simon Whistler. He looks so sad right now. That's crazy. Oh, wow.
With an offer of a pardon, but Jamuka refused and begged to be put to death. Acceding to his wish, Genghis allowed his old friend to be suffocated to death inside a carpet. Despite his reputation as an unfeeling executioner, Genghis turned away, unable to watch the scene.
Wow. Now, on the other video I watched about them trying to find the tomb, I knew that him and the friend had parted, but I didn't know how the friend had died. Clearly, I knew the friend would eventually have died, but I didn't know how he died. He was smothered in a carpet, like wrapped up in it. That's crazy.
Having defeated the Naimans, Genghis was now the supreme ruler of in excess of 2 million people. Having had a taste of supreme power, he now wanted more. There were still parts of Mongolia that were not part of his empire. These were areas along the eastern and southern regions of the country. Over a period of months, he systematically beat into submission those who had not yet come under his yoke. Genghis rode at the very front of his ferocious hordes, personally overseeing every detail of the attack. But his greatest skill lay in his ability to handpick brilliant generals. In doing so, he managed to unite a people who had for centuries been at war with one another. In 1206, the people made Genghis their supreme ruler, bestowing upon him the title of Khan, the great leader. As recorded in the secret history of the Mongols.
That's how he got Khan. Interesting. Because I know the original, and I'm already gonna butcher the name. I forgot it. Timjin. Okay, so the video that I did just before this was they're trying to find the tomb of Genghis Khan, which was a newer video. So I should probably release that video first. Why am I telling you? You don't care. But anyways, that was a video I did. And they tell you his name, but they don't tell you how he came up. Oh, that was a good burp. How he came about getting the name Khan. I don't remember. They do talk about it. But I'm drinking, so I don't remember. But the Khan part. Okay, so we know Khan was bestowed. Oh my goodness, I apologize. I have been drinking. Khan was, what's the word I'm trying to say? Bestowed on him as a kind of like a leader. But the Genghis part hasn't been explained yet. If anyone knows that part and it doesn't get mentioned, if it does get mentioned, I'll pause it clearly and talk about it because I've been drinking a lot, so I get talky. I'm a happy drunkard. But if it doesn't get mentioned, could you please say something about it? And I do apologize, but I won't remember after this video because I have a terrible memory to remember anything I talked about. My apologies for that.
Mongols, the people proclaimed, "We will make you our leader, our great Khan. We will fling ourselves like lightning upon your foes. We shall give you the fairest girls from the enemy. If we disobey you, take our flocks and our wives and our children and throw our worthless heads upon the sand." Between military conquests, Genghis enjoyed the rewards of success. He gathered more wives and fathered more children. By his first wife, Berta, he had 4 sons who would each be given rulership over a part of his empire. Despite the wealth, luxury, and family with which he now surrounded himself, Genghis was tormented by vivid dreams in which he was continually riding in the conquest of one land after another. Impelled by these dreams and his own innate ambition, he became fixated on the vast lands that lay beyond the Great Wall on his southern border.
Interesting. So he had nightmare or dreams.
In 1206, Genghis called together a great summit of his...
He had dreams about conquering. Or were they nightmares about conquering? And maybe nightmares about the failure of conquering, which made his drive to conquer stronger. Does that make sense?
Generals and tribal leaders to discuss his planned invasion of China. Between Mongolia and China lay the kingdom of Hsia, the land of the Tanguts. This was a key trade route between Central Asia and the West. Genghis undertook a campaign of conquest that within 2 years brought the entire kingdom of Hsia under his domain. The way was now open to invade China. In an effort to capitalize on his previous dealings with the Qin Empire, Khan sent a peace envoy over the wall. Qin authorities, however, they were suspicious of the visitors and they put them to death. On hearing of this outcome, Genghis took to his tent and fasted for 3 days. He emerged to announce that the heavens had declared that he would be victorious and the time to wreak vengeance upon the Qin was now. With 40,000 cavalrymen riding behind him, Genghis crossed the border, smashing over the wall and into China. They then swept down upon the Qin Empire. They approached with unrivaled speed.
Stupid question, I do apologize. Was the Great Wall, and I've done a video on this and I don't remember, was the Great Wall of China built specifically for the defense against the Mongols or Genghis Khan, or was it already built and it was just against any kind of Mongol marauders, period? I've done the video, don't remember, so apologies for that.
And quiet until almost upon the enemy, when the thundering of their horses' hooves shook the ground. The attacks that followed were overwhelming, crushing their enemies and destroying their encampments. It was during the Qin campaign that the ruthlessness of Genghis Khan became legendary. He would use captured women and children as human shields in battle, forcing them to march ahead of his army as they approached an enemy village. Within 2...
I gotta say, that's a bit of a dick move. Understand it, but can't agree with that one.
Years of first invading China, Genghis had reached the capital of the Qin Empire, Zhongdu, which is modern-day Beijing. The great city was encircled by a wall and strongly fortified. Khan's army laid siege for almost a year. Finally, with the aid of siege towers and catapults, the Mongols managed to breach the wall. After a fierce battle, and at the cost of thousands of Chinese lives, the city fell. After subjugating the Qin Empire, Genghis rode back to the steppe country of his birth. But it wasn't long before the spirit of conquest once more fired his ambition. He now looked to the world beyond China. He looked to the fringe of Europe. Between China and Europe lay the vast Islamic empire known as Khorasan. This area was ruled by a Shah who had power that equaled that of Genghis himself. But Khan did not wish to subjugate the lands of the Shah. He sought only peace, sending a caravan of envoys to Khorasan. Yet, just after they crossed the border, all of his men, they were captured and slaughtered. An enraged Genghis sent another group of envoys, this time instructing them to go directly to the Shah. They too were murdered by Islamic soldiers. For Genghis, who believed in the absolute inviolability of envoys, this was far too much. The time for vengeance was once again at hand. He set out at the head of his largest army to date, more than 200,000 men. Years of savage butchery were unleashed upon the Muslim people. By the time the bloodletting subsided, Genghis Khan had wrestled absolute power away from the Shah. His vast empire now spanned from the Yellow Sea in the east all the way to the Caspian in the west. Before returning to the steppes, Genghis Khan appointed his son, Ugadei, as the heir. He now faced the problem of controlling his vast empire. In the summer of 1226, he rode to the head of 180,000 warriors to crush an uprising among the Tangut people. Before he got to them, however, he fell from his horse and suffered serious injuries and internal bleeding. Over the coming months, he only got worse. On August the 18th, 1226, and at the height of his powers, he died. Genghis Khan's legacy would be cemented by his grandson Kublai Khan, who extended the Mongolian Empire to encompass 2 continents and to become the largest empire in history. Perhaps Khan's most enduring contribution, however, was that, although forged through unspeakable violence, his conquests brought about a peace and stability that enabled the first ever flow of trade and ideas between the Eastern and Western worlds. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did,
Of all the fighting, of all the conquering that he did, he fell off his horse, which led to internal bleeding, and that's what killed him. Wow. I'm shaking. I'm suddenly getting cold. What a... Don't misunderstand this, but like, what a... Considering all the conquest, all the violence, all the battles, to have fallen off your horse. It's just one of those things where it doesn't make sense. That's not how he should have... That's not how his life should have ended. Does he have a good speech that he gave? Because I know Alexander the Great had a speech. Does he have a great speech? I put people like Genghis Khan, people like Alexander the Great, and I know some might not agree with this, but I mean, look, I will always say this. Napoleon, I mean, yeah, but I'll say this, someone who's underrated, I think, is Khalid ibn Walid, and I know I butchered the name, but, you know, people who just conquered, and like even Khalid, or Khalid, his ending is not fit for the way he lived his life. Like, I totally disagree with him being removed. It just doesn't fit. And then to die in obscurity. I don't know. Yeah, Genghis Khan is a fascinating character. Wow, that was a burp I should have muted, but I didn't. Hold on. All right, that was my 4th beer in about 40 minutes. So I think I'm going to stop drinking. No, I won't. I'm going to eat some food, though. That would help. And until my next video, you have a good day and have a good night. Oh, I'm going to be peeing like a crazy man in a minute.